5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good evening, Indigo Children Radio listeners, and welcome to tonight's live broadcast, May 8th, 2014. We've got a great show planned for you tonight as we are joined by Hermetic magician Rufus Opus, discussing the Holy Guardian Angel, practical attainment of the Philosopher's Stone, and what is applied Hermetics. All this and more in less than 40 seconds. If you want to call into the broadcast live, we want to hear from you, but at the top of the hour. So add Indigo Children Radio to your Skype contacts list and join the conversation. Join us this summer in Indianapolis, Indiana for the International Left Hand Path Conference on July 25th. 3 days of events including authors, speakers, musicians, black tie ball, workshops, live music, book signings, and more. So at the end of the broadcast, give us 30 seconds of your time and we will play that down for you. Let's welcome tonight's guest. Rufus Opus is a professional Hermetic magician and teacher of the esoteric arts. He has authored several books on practical application of Hermetic principles and teaches the Red Work series of courses, an in-depth study of the process of the alchemical great work. His major personal accomplishments to date include knowledge in conversation with the Holy Guardian Angel, the completion of the Hermetic great work as laid out in the Emerald Tablet of Hermes, the creation of the Philosopher's Stone, and R.O., as he is known, with over 20 years of training and practice, is a firm believer that magical study should result in tangible, practical manifestations of a better life, not only for the magician, but for everyone they come into contact with. So for more information, go ahead, pull up another tab, check out his website at www.rufusopus.com, or you can go over to his blog, headforred.blogspot.com, or check the links below the Facebook event page. Tonight we'll be focusing on his favorite topic, the actual practical application of the Hermetic principles. That is, applied Hermetics. So with that, we're going to welcome Rufus to the show. Rufus, welcome, and thanks for joining us tonight.
Well, thanks a lot for having me. I've been looking forward to this for quite some time now.
Yes, for those of you that don't know, we've actually been trying to put this together for a year. Rufus joins us by popular demand by no less than 3 Indigo Children Radio viewers, so thank you, and they've helped make this happen, and tonight we're looking forward to a great broadcast. Might we mention, before we get into this is going to be more advanced stuff, so for those of you advanced students, go ahead and prepare to learn.
All right, yeah. So, yeah, I'm going to try to frame things a little bit with, we're going to review some of the very basics of Hermetics and the philosophy and the cosmology before we jump into the more advanced stuff. But I really don't want to spend too much time going over it. It's just,
right.
You know, there's a lot to it. But, yeah, I figured we could at least sketch in the basics so that we could start taking a look at what the framework is that we're going to be working in as we go through this. You know, there's a lot of different maps to the territory. There's a lot of different ways of interpreting the universe at large and the individual human being's relationship to it. The Bible produces a framework that a lot of people like to pretend that they understand and adapt. You know, there's others, I guess, the Buddhist framework or the Chaos Magician's meta framework that, you know, frameworks are only frameworks as long as they're, you know, kind of fun. But in Hermetics and in Hermetic magic, there's actually a belief system that is laid out in some sacred texts in the Corpus Hermeticum. And I didn't know anything about that. You know, personally, I didn't hear about Hermetics until I was reading through, what's his name, Donald Michael Craig's Modern Magic was my first introduction to what ceremonial magic was, and I thought that was Hermetic magic. Mm-hmm. And I started reading some of the sources that he drew from and got into the whole Golden Dawn and some of the early OTO members, and Aleister Crowley, of course. He was always a big hero of mine. I thought he was pretty cool. And you know, I found this book called The Kybalion that basically lays out the principles of Hermetics, and I think that
right.
that the Kybalions, or Kybalion, or however you want to say it, its basic structure and premise has kind of informed most of what modern thought uses when they refer to the term hermetics. And basically it says that everything is mind. Everything that exists in the cosmic mind, and we are mind, and if we can control our minds, then we can control everything that is. And the principles and the goals of hermetics are all about finding unity with this higher power, this higher mind that we are manifestations of, and that's how you can take control of your life and really influence everything and be a better person and be more than human. And it's kind of a really frustrating piece of literature to me today, because everything in it is very true and very real, but the words that they use are so simple that they're so very easily misunderstood and misapplied. I mean, and that's why when you look at systems like The Secret or New Thought, pretty much anything that's based on the New Thought movements of the 1890s, the name it and claim it, if you can convince yourself it's true, it'll definitely work. A lot of people try this stuff and it doesn't work for them, and they're like, whatever, it's all bullshit, right?
Right.
But it's not. It's because it's based on that Kybalion version of hermetics, that everything is mind and what you think becomes real. It's true in a very fundamental way, but it happens as the result of some processes that most people haven't activated. We don't get trained in how to really fully utilize these aspects of our human existence. Our tools that we're born with. There's no training in modern culture or society to actually utilize those things, and we think that our day-to-day thoughts are the kind of thoughts that can program reality, and it's not true. It takes something special, like Douglas Adams is a famous example of someone who used aphorisms to really get themselves published. He was like, I will become a syndicated cartoonist. And he started drawing Dilbert. And yeah, he was witty, and he happened to be just recording what he saw happening around him in an office environment, and it connected with a lot of people in his generation. But he attributes his success to writing out these daily affirmations. I will become a syndicated cartoon artist, and so I mean, it takes something. A framework to channel the thoughts, something to energize it and activate it. And most of us don't have that kind of training or that skill set. There are some people who come by it intuitively and other people who don't. But when you start just reading through the Kybalion, and you see everything is mind, and matter is based on mind and all that stuff, it can leave you with the wrong impression, because most of what you think of as your mind isn't really your mind. It's really just some impulses and some training that you've been programmed with from society, from culture, from commercials and cartoons and all that stuff. But that's not your mind. Anyway, I personally started getting deeper and deeper into Hermetics, and I eventually found that Hermetics is almost a religion. It's almost like Christianity. It was one of the competing beliefs in the 1st through the 3rd centuries, along with the Gnostics and the different branches of Gnosticism and the Essenes. Christianity was in the mix. The Lucian rites, the mysteries of Eleusis, the Isis cults, all those things that were around during the debaucherous last days of the Roman Empire in the 1st through the 3rd centuries were all competing for the popular mindsets, spiritual belief systems, right? Everybody mingled and exchanged ideas, and almost, well, I don't know, a lot of the systems, I'll say, have the same core cosmology that's based on the Neoplatonic, Neoplatonist cosmology, that basically there is one source of everything. That source manifests everything else. Everything that we are is an extension of that source. And the first thing that came out of the source was light. And then out of the light, it compacted and withdrew itself from part of itself. And that part was the material world. And then it spoke. And when it spoke, its word leapt forth and became a separate entity. the word, the logos, and when you look at how the logos unfolds in Christianity, it became Christ. In the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God. So you can think of the Neoplatonist logos as sort of like a Christ, Son of God, the first manifestation of God. So it's God's Son. And the logos was able to take the thoughts that existed in the mind of God and express them, and what the logos said happened in the material world and everywhere around them. So like when in the Bible it talks about how God hovered over the waters, the Spirit of the Lord hovered over the waters and said, Luke's fiat, let there be light, and there was light. That's logos, right? That's the expression of the idea of
Right.
God into a material form. All right, and that's kind of, that basic core structure is adapted and adopted in the different belief systems, and the Gnostics have their version of it, with like the Sophia and the Demiurge and all these layers of archons, there's like 365 heavens and all this crap before they even get to the. It's really complicated, and I don't pretend to understand the Gnostic cosmology. I respect it a lot. I have a lot of friends who are like, I don't know, Johannites, and they're rebirthing the whole Gnostic. God bless them, or not the Demiurge, but whatever,
Right.
bless them. But I can't keep up with it. It's way too complicated.
The Kybalion is an excellent book. For those of you who are listening and heard Rufus reference that, you can find it on Amazon. It's an excellent book, and I had to say it was probably one of the first occult books that really, really moved me on a deep, deep level. Yes, there are a lot of common themes when you start getting into a lot of Western esoteric occult groups and similar themes of that nature, but that Kybalion really, really... It was so deep. At the same time, I have to admit it made no sense whatsoever. Probably didn't make any sense to me personally for 4 years, at least 4 years.
Yeah, it does have some really advanced concepts in it, but it just presents them in really, small words that even I could understand. I understood what they were saying. I'm with you though. I didn't understand how it applied until actually after I went through and went through these researches and did all this study and started actually conjuring spirits and experiencing what the framework was based on, because the Kybalion is 19th, early 20th century distillation of 12,000 years of emanationist evolution of thought, belief systems that have come down to us from the Chaldeans, it's the Persians. It's a very ancient system that's being condensed into one little book called the Kybalion. And I guess I still am pretty frustrated with the book because I really thought I got it. I always thought I was smarter than everybody else. And I really didn't, and doesn't provide enough of a framework because it was written by the three initiates. They were Golden Dawn initiates. They did have access to a system, a codification of Western mystery traditions that most people don't have. So applying the knowledge and wisdom of the Kybalion in your life without that training and that framework it's just very hard. It takes a lot of practice and stumbling around, and it's I get a little mad because I wasted. I mean, in my bio, I write about how I've over 20 years of experience in the occult. That's true, but it's only been since 2006 that I've really been making any decent headway. So I've got at least 12 plus years of totally wasted wheel spinning and it's just that's actually why I write books, is so that other people don't have to waste as much time on it as I did.
Right. That's an excellent point that you bring up. I think a lot of people that get into media in this contemporary vein that we're into are doing it because we've all wasted a lot of time, and we all learn the hard way that, oh wow, if you really want to become that thing, it's going to take you 4 or 5 plus years of professional education, much like it does in the real world.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Let's not you just hit on something that's been bugging me a lot lately, is that people don't think that what all this stuff is real world work. It's like, okay, I'm just going to learn a magic spell. I'm going to say the spell. I'm going to recite it. I'm going to follow the rules. I'm going to do everything that it takes to do it, and I will conjure these spirits, and everything's going to get better. Everything is going to get better, and that's it. And it's really frustrating to me that people come to magic looking for a genie in a bottle, and when the genie comes out, what they get is an education system, an opportunity to experience the things that will lead to the desire, and then they're like, this didn't work.
Right.
Yeah, it did, but what'd you expect? So.
Right, and it is a difficult path. It seems like the reason a lot of people are fail is because they actually tried to be exactly Jesus Christ and exactly Aleister Crowley, and not themselves, coming from a place of themselves. No, I'm doing it because Crowley said we're powerful enough to do it. Now I'm going to do it. So going back to what you were saying, Hermetics seems like it's done an excellent job talking about who we are, talking about where we come from. And it even talks a little bit about what human really is. Did we hit a little bit about what the Kabbalion and what it defines as what human really is while we wrap up the framework of the cosmology about applied hermetics?
Well, no, actually, I see it's a deep subject, and I just sort of barely got into the part where God was emanating everything. And I'll try to find a way to. All right, so after God created the world, right? In the Hermetic, all right. So Hermetics actually, before it was condensed into the Kabbalion, was a religion. It was a belief system. It was a complete framework. It had a God. It had a salvation path. It had the emanation of man. Man was created in God's image. God created the Logos. The Logos created the 7 planetary spheres and the intelligences of those spheres. They worked together on the purification of the elements and the mingling of the elements. And basically there's a whole process of pretty technical condensation between the mind and the thought of God and the actual material manifestation of it, right? And in Hermetics, they taught that it had to go through the Logos, it had to go through the 7 planetary governors, it got turned over to 4 elemental kings, who then wove together their forces to make the spiritual forces become a material thing. All right, so that's the system that man is created into. Okay, so and that's where a lot of the study comes in the OTO and in the AA, in my experience. The Crowley stuff, the Golden Dawn, a lot of the study goes into learning what that system is. It's a system of the material world of 4 elements, the celestial world of the 7 planets, the fixed stars, which are fate and the constellations, and then the realms of God. There are angels and choirs associated with each sphere. You have to learn all the correspondences in that to really understand what they represent. And anyway, that's the system. That's the framework. All right. One material world made up of 4 elemental forces, 7 planetary forces that are manifested through the 4 elemental forces into the material world, and all of that is the manifestation of the Word that condenses the thought of God. So everything is God, everything is a manifestation of God, and the things that we experience are all materializations of thought from the mind of God. Right, so that's the system and that man is born into. Right, so the creation of man comes along, and this is where we get into who we are, where we come from, and what a human being really is. All right, God looked at everything, and he was done creating the world and the system. Everything was in place, and he was still fucking bored. Okay, this is the RO version. God was so bored that he manifested, because the angels had no real free will. They were just workers, really. The Word was like another expression of himself that he was consciously aware of. He didn't have anybody like himself to hang out with and he couldn't actually go down and experience anything in the material world that he had created himself. So he makes an image of himself that is like God, and that's the human being. Okay, male and female did he create them? And I try to use the word human instead of man, but in all the ancient texts, they're all translated as man, but it's non-gender specific. But human beings are an image of God. It's important to remember that we are not only an emanation of God, but we were made in his image. And what that means is we create the same way God creates. He created the world by speaking his thought into word, and then it materializes through the process, right? So when God created man, the first thing man did was he went through each of the seven heavens, and all the seven governors, the archangels of the spheres, or the intelligences, whatever you want to call them, they fell in love with him because he looked just like God, and so they bestowed on him all the teachings of their spheres and a portion of their power. So man goes down through the seven spheres and receives a piece of the powers of each of them, and then he pokes his head in the material world. He sees it so beautiful. He sees his reflection in the water. The spirit of the world makes him a physical form because she sees the reflection of God. She falls in love with him, and so Sophia, the Spiritus Mundi, creates a physical form for him, and he goes down, descends into it, and becomes one with it. All right, so that's how man is brought into the material world, and why we're trapped in the material body that dies, but we're still immortal spirits, right? So that kind of establishes the two aspects of our existence, mortality and immortality. And these are all key points to really understand what the Kabbalion's talking about. If you don't understand that the human being is a miniature God who is a manifestation of God, who is in and of itself a divine being, one of the teachings of Hermetics is that there are all these different orders of angels in each of the different spheres. Well, the angels of the earth are the human beings. We're the intelligence of the earth. We're supposed to be the ones that are shaping it and molding it. We're little images of God. We create our own existence, our own world, our own experiences by taking a raw, unmanifest thought and speaking it into being. Until you can take a thought and put it into words, you don't really know what you want, and once you put it into words, you go about building it into something, and it's like saying, if I want a six-figure a year job, I want a six-figure a year job. I can put it into words. I've taken an idea, I've said it out loud, I've materialized it at one level. All right, now I can take a look at what I need to do to make that happen. And there's steps and processes along the way. There's I have to find the process and work through the process, and get the education so I can get the experience, so I can get the income that I want. It's a step-by-step process. I know what to do. I go out and I do it. I try, I struggle, I fail, I finally succeed, I have my six-figure job, okay? It wasn't easy, but it was pretty simple. It's a process. You go through the process, you succeed at it, and if you fail, you keep trying. So anyway, that whole thing that we do whenever we make something that we want happen for ourselves in our life is basically what God did when he created the world. That's the core essence of Hermetics. We are manifestations of God. We're the physical material gods. All right. So who we are, we are essentially gods. Where do we come from? We come from God. We are in the family of God. We are we're divine beings. So when you look at what a human being really is, it's a pinprick consciousness of this incredibly vast, larger version of ourselves that basically manifested as us so that we can come down here and create our world, build up whatever we want so we can experience it, enjoy it, and participate in it, and send that back up into the source. We're like we're the way that God can actually experience what he created in Hermetics. That's the cosmology, and that's kind of the perspective that you learn to adapt and adopt as you go through the processes of the training that we'll hopefully briefly touch on soon. When you go through the processes of the great work, you you basically you're working on reclaiming that divine nature, your divine race. If you look at what we really are racially, we're related to the gods. We are divine. So the process of the great work is basically reclaiming that. In a lot of modern Hermetic schools, I talk about unity with the divine as the goal. The OTO and the Golden Dawn teach that. That's the intent. I personally think there's more to it than that. I think it's not just union with the divine. It's just kind of remembering that you are united with the divine, and then creating your world so you can experience it. Part of why we're here is not just so that we can continue to create it and enjoy it and have fun in it. It's also to experience that and kind of take that back up with us. So anyway, that's. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that it did seem like after a person gets to that stage in their life where you're done being miserable and you're done having all the walls thrown up in every direction where you're trying to get something accomplished, when you get past that, it really does seem like it was quite obvious and simple. There's this strange perspective. There's a strange new perspective, and it's really difficult to relay it to people because you realize now you're one of those one of those idiots saying, "Oh, you'll understand when you get there."
Right. Well, and you do, but getting there is part of the fun. I mean, honestly, right. I guess at this point in my personal experiences, I've done a lot of different things. I've been really successful at a lot of different things, and I've seen kind of that you can either enjoy the process or not, and figuring out who you are and what you want is most of what the great work is all about in Hermetics and in alchemy. But until you've done that, until you know who you are, until you know what you want, you can't really have anything that's going to make you happy because you haven't decided what it is that you want that you're going to make happen. And until you've actually hit that point, I spent years chasing after stuff that I thought would make me happy because I believed the hype. I thought that I can't even think of any examples right now that are anything I'd actually want to admit to live on the air. But
all of it, all true. It's like you said, I believe after we're done having a hard time, it makes a lot of sense that we should be down here having a lot of fun because the Kabbalion doesn't leave a lot of room for us to imagine that when you're outside of a physical form, outside of 3-dimension, it seems like there's a lot of pure oneness. There's not a lot of emotions and feelings you're going to necessarily experience if you're not here.
Right. And, what's the point of that?
Right, exactly.
Yep. You can't, and see, I think this is something that a lot of mystics miss, is that every time you ascend through all the heavens and attain, samadhi bliss and that feeling of unity and oneness with everything, unless you're killing yourself, you're still coming back to the body, and if union with the divine was if that was really the goal of any spiritual path, every spiritual path would basically be kill yourself. I mean, it's just, that's not it, guys. So apparently there's more, and that's the fun part. You go through the alchemical great work, right? It's a metaphor for spiritual attainment, where you go through and you purify your different elements, and you get to you refine yourself. You go through the solve and the coagula, the dissolution and the reforming of the self. And I'm going through some AA stuff right now that is designed to really make you look at parts of yourself that you aren't even aware of most of the time. And this is after I've actually, I consider myself having accomplished the great work. I'm now going through some like really basic mystical training here, and I'm being forced to do this daily work, and I'm seeing these results that I never would have predicted were possible, and it's more than a little annoying because for many years I bashed these systems as being a waste of time, but I didn't I didn't know what I was talking about. So, but the process of getting yourself purified and cleansed and learning who you are, it's all a big metaphor for figuring out who you are and what you want. Here I am, Rufus. I've got a civilian named Josh. What does Josh want? What is Josh doing with his life? I mean, these are all the great questions that Aristotle and Cornelius Agrippa were all talking about asking yourself. What do I want to do today? These are like really fundamental things, and people don't understand that the whole process of the great work is about finding out ways to answer that in meaningful ways.
And if we can't answer these questions, then we can't get on to the remembering part so that we can reclaim this divine aspect of ourselves. Yeah,
very true. So and so basically that's the point of the work is to remember that you're a divine person and reclaim that power that we were granted on our way down, the power to create our world as we see fit. It's kind of arrogant, I mean, honestly, right. But it's true. It's what we're doing. So in the alchemical system, they break it down into these different phases, and I find it pretty useful to take it through there. If you take a piece of anything, we'll say that you are refining, or I work with copper a lot. So let's say you take a piece of copper and you're gonna heat it up so that you can make it into a piece of jewelry or a disc or an amulet or a talisman, whatever. You take the lump of raw material, and the first thing you do is you heat it up. You hit it with a blowtorch, or I use a blowtorch because it's fun. But, whatever, you heat it up, and the first thing it does is it turns black. And you keep adding more heat, and then it turns white. And then when it's white, it starts to melt. And then when it melts, it turns into like a little bead or a ball. And then after it's melted and it's into the union shape, it cools off and it changes into all these different colors. And then you start heating it again and shaping it and molding it and heating it more and shaping it and molding it. And then you when you're done, you've actually created something that you can use for whatever purpose you had intended in the first place, right? So that's the process, and the different colors, the black, white, green, and red in the projection phase of the great work of the alchemists use are all references to that. It's when you start with a base matter, you heat it up, and the first thing it does is it turns black. It's the carbonization of whatever it is you're burning. That represents the phase where the impurities rise to the surface, and it's sort of the solvay phase where everything is dissolved. When you're going through that process, when you're going through any kind of the initiations or the path working that Hermetics provides, you go through some shit in life. Your basic shit comes out whenever you start trying to make yourself a better person. Like if you're trying to lose weight, the first thing that happens is, oh my God, cake, and it's like everywhere. But if you're disciplined, then you get a little better at it and a little better at it. That's the black phase, is when you first start drawing out the negative parts of yourself so you can leave them behind and really learn to go after what you really want, and then the white phase, that sort of corresponds to the knowledge and conversation with the holy guardian angel in like Crowley's system, for example, or the Golden Dawn system is, I think they call it the Watcher at the Threshold or something. I'm not really that familiar with the Golden Dawn. They irritated me early in my life, and I never kind of got over it. So I have not studied their system as well as I probably should have, even though I respect a lot of people that are in it. I just don't know a lot about it. But knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel in the Western magical tradition is like this really big deal, and Crowley represented it as sort of this this point at which you attain what a lot of people consider, in their own misunderstanding of everything, to be enlightenment. You know, equivalent to, like, I guess, being Buddha. And there's this belief in the Western magical community at large that when you attain knowledge and conversation with your Holy Guardian Angel, you will suddenly, you know, walk on water and be able to change water to wine because you'll be Christ and all this stuff. But while it should be the first goal of every magician to gain knowledge and conversation with their Holy Guardian Angel, it is not the end of the work by any means. It's just the beginning. In the Greek magical papyri, one of the first things you do is you gain a supernatural assistant. And in a lot of like root, I don't want to say root doctors. It's not hoodoo. It's not really hoodoo. It's I'll just say folk magic systems. One of the first things you get as a practitioner of a folk magical system is a fetch or a familiar. And for many different systems, that was normal. You know, shaman will go out on a vision quest and come back with an ally. You know, it's a common motif. The attainment of the Holy Guardian Angel and ceremonial magic is roughly equivalent to that. It's like getting your guardian spirit, connecting with a manifestation of your higher self. You know, it's all those things, but it's also your familiar spirit, your guide, your guardian. The Abermelin rite that Crowley takes the name Holy Guardian Angel from, it's it's basically a kind of a German folk magic operation that puts you in touch with something that is so holy that the demons, the evil demons of the earth, can't stand to be around it, and so they'll do whatever you want. And when you get down to it, the Abermelin rite is itself a book of demon magic, you know. So when people in Western occultism take the Holy Guardian Angel and put it up on a pedestal and focus on attaining knowledge and conversation with the Holy Guardian Angel as this great spiritual act, I think they're missing the point if they don't also acknowledge that it's a system that is designed to put you in touch with the things you need to be able to create your material world around you the way you see fit. You know, that's something. I have a lot of friends that are into demon magic. I've done a lot of it myself. The Goetia, Goetic types of systems of making things work in the material world. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's about they're basically spirits of the material realm, and they help you materialize things. And if you know what you're doing and what you want, you know, you can work with those forces effectively. But you have to be pretty aware of things. I accidentally burned my house down working with some demons. For example, anyway, yeah, I needed $4,000 and asked the demon to get it for me, and the first check I got when my house burned down was for $4,000. I was like, oh, that's not what I wanted. So
that road for a second really quickly. For those people that are in advanced magic that are really beginning to dabble with these sort of things, what do you think people should expect when they actually contact a being? And then can you follow that up with any thoughts on, do you believe these beings are separate entities from yourself in a way, or are they just part of you in the Hermetic all?
Okay. Well, wow. All right. Yeah. I'm sorry. That's a pretty interesting one that I haven't had to.
Did we get down there? How about let's start with what should people expect? They say they're getting to that level. They're about ready to start whipping it on. They've been reading your courses. They're starting to get their egregores and their similars, their familiar spirits. What should they expect? Let's just start there. What should they expect? Okay. You know, we don't want to go into a bunch of negative details, but what should they expect when they want to go that way, because we're talking results based, in your face magic now.
Okay, well, all right. So your first time you conjure a spirit, you should probably expect not to see anything. You should expect not to hear anything or smell anything. That doesn't mean you won't, but you should expect it to feel kind of awkward and sort of like the first time you're ever giving a public presentation in front of a conference room full of people that you barely know, but you have to work with. When you're a new hire at a company and you have to actually give those awkward presentations about things that you barely understand, that you've been sent to take care of, you stumble over your words, and the presentation doesn't go well, and you're not sure that people are actually communicating with you, and you don't know how to read the expressions on the people's faces, and you shouldn't expect your first conjuration to go any more smoothly than your first presentation in a conference room. There's going to be you don't really have the experience to really appreciate what's going on. The first maybe half dozen conjurations that you do might be that way, or and this isn't true for everyone. Some people go in and they conjure an archangel and it appears before them, and wow, everything is beautiful, and their whole life has changed. For me, it was different. I had a lot of nothing happened experiences for a long time, and then went through some personal transformations, and when I got back into angel magic, I conjured an angel, and I looked in the crystal ball that I was using, and there was a face that formed itself, and so I saw a face, and I heard thoughts that sounded like thoughts, but they weren't like thoughts that were coming from inside my head. It was over time I've had other experiences where I've learned to smell certain smells. You feel the pressure in the room change. It's all very subjective. It's never anything that you can, like, I guess, record or anything like that. It's all very much a mental thing that you're aware of, but it does have a very sensual taste to it, or a sensual aspect to it. There's I know a lady that conjured aS0u5k of I think it was of Jupiter. It might have been from a natal chart, but she smelled basil. Her whole experience with aS0u5k was basil, and she tasted it, smelled it, but there's no telling what you're going to actually experience. But the point of practical magic isn't about the experience. The point of practical magic is about the result, and it doesn't fucking matter if you're sitting there and you feel like a fucking retard and you've gone through the motions and you've said the prayers and you feel like you're all alone. It doesn't matter. You say what you want to have happen, and then you finish up the rite. You thank the spirits that you can't see, that you're sure didn't show up. You just thank them anyway in case they did. You close it out. You write down the date and time you did the rite, and 2 weeks later, lo and behold, the shit that you asked for is happening. So, I
want to ask an awkward question on this note. An awkward question. Do you believe, because of what you said, it sounds like in your experience the magic is working whether you're just playing around or not? But then there are those people that have. Go ahead.
Yeah. Speak. Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah, that I do think that the magic always works whether you know it or not. How effective is it going to be? I mean, dude, I've been doing this shit for years and years. I could go out and do a ritual right now to win the lottery, and I will not even come close. I will have 3 out of the 5 numbers at best. I won't even win $2. There's no how do you put it? Lottery magic. Jason Miller has a lot of stuff that he's written about this. It's stupid magic to do. Everybody's doing lottery magic. There's other stuff going on. You just learn to do effective magic. I wouldn't do lottery magic. I would do magic to get an opportunity to make some side money if I needed it. it's how magic works. So
I want to ask you another question as we're kind of talking about the alchemical phase and the changing of things. In your experience, man, I knew that was going to happen. Go ahead. We're going to have to move on. Listeners, the question just blew my mind. I hate that. Moving on.
Sorry.
I knew that was going to happen. Anyway, moving on.
Happens.
Yeah, it was great. It was. I had a great question. Okay, so we talked about the magic is working, whether you believe in it or not. You're just dabbling around. Now, speak to the people. Going back to the intro, we're going to address this question later, but we talked about I've tried it, it's not working, and we got to open up these filters and we got to get into this mindset.
Well,
when it comes to these demons that have been described in these books, like they tell you how they're going to look, like so-and-so shows up as a child, so-and-so shows up in a beautiful form, so-and-so shows up, ugly, whatever, all the big voice, little voice. How did they know so much about that to put it in a book? And has your experience with these beings similar enough to say, oh, that's the guy we're looking for?
Well, I believe it was Josephine McCarthy. I might be wrong, but somebody recently compared a lot of the grimoires of the Middle Ages that you're referring to as the dark fluff of their time. Dark fluff is a kind of a modern word for some of the left-hand path stuff that where basically you take any magical system of any type or genre and add the word dark in front of it, and you have dark magic, and there's there's dark fairy magic and dark dragon magic, and it's basically all the Wicca magic from the late 80s and early 90s, all the different, Dancing with Dragons and all that absolutely silly, ridiculous bullshit that came out of Llewellyn back then. Right. Anyway, sorry. But yes, they put dark in front of it, and it's all the fluff magic from the 80s with only it's like totally goth and shit, right? So it's super
How to Turn Your Boyfriend into a Toad was a title that was selling early 2000s, if you remember, folks.
That's pretty bad. But yeah, okay, so the Lemmegeton, I don't know how to say it right, the Lemmegeton, the Lesser Key of Solomon.
Right.
That's the book that the Goetia comes from. That's a grimoire of the 72 spirits. And it's basically, it can be seen as there are elements to it that are a little bit dark fluff of its timey. Do they appear that way? I have friends who conjure them and see them. In their opinion, they are physically materializing in the room with them, and they are seeing and witnessing and experiencing them exactly the way they're described in the book.
Wow.
Me, I'm not into that. I very rarely saw the spirits. The one time I did have any kind of what to me was in my sensate body, it was an actual physical manifestation of the spirit that I had conjured. I very nearly shit myself, and it was an awkward moment where I thanked the entity most humbly for its appearance and for its time, and made my offerings and asked it to just go away.
Right.
And it kindly did so, and I was like, oh yeah, well, so I mean, but no, not most of the time. It's not like that. Sometimes it is. I don't know whether it's because the magician who's conjuring it expects it, and they've convinced themselves it's going to be that way. Is it all psychological? No, of course it's not. There's obviously something going on that's external to the individual consciousness of the magician. I think that there's more than one consciousness at work. There's those in the physical bodies and those without the physical bodies. Like I worked extensively with 18 of the 72 spirits for a while, and they all have their own personalities. After I'd conjured them a few times, I would get mental images of what they looked like.
Right.
Sometimes Sometimes it was the images that were described in the book. Sometimes it was my version of those images in the books. They often communicated with me in dreams. Lon Milo Duquette is a big proponent of the idea that these guys are kind of manifestations of your own inner demons and forces of yourself that you haven't necessarily integrated, and you have to kind of project as being separate from yourself, and that it's all part of your own cosmic self, right? And that's why, you can sit there and conjure Bune of the Goetia, and I can sit here and conjure him at the same time, and we both end up having him. Or, you could bind him in chains of iron and steel and punish him the way the Lemegeddon advises you to, which is always a bad idea. And I could still conjure him and he'd be free. So why is he free for me when you've obviously got him tied down? Well, he must obviously be parts of your psyche. Well, I don't see it that way. I think that it represents a manifestation of an intelligence of a force. Bune is a spirit of wealth, brings riches to a man. There is a force that brings riches to people, and it's got a goetic side to it that manifests as Bune, and they're spirits. They can do things we can't. They can be in more than one place. They can be in more than one state. So, that's my opinion.
It begs this question, though, I think, out of all the people working on Goetia and the various other old grimoires that are talking about these things, and they're all demanding the presence of these same beings, I wonder, though, if one is chained up, the other one is free, he appears to you, he's free, I've chained him and bound him to all these, disgraceful ways. Is it his prerogative to manifest as a servant to each magician differently? Or, because it seems like we got 72. Let's say there's 50,000 or even 1 million hardcore magicians and sorcerers in the world demanding their time. What are your thoughts on that? Do they splitting their time up? What do you think?
Okay, so the grimoire writers covered their asses with this one. Each of the spirits have legions under their control, right? So there's the argument that when you conjure Bune of the Goetia for riches and somebody else is conjuring him, both of you are getting a sub-demon. You're both getting a lieutenant in the armies of Bune, one of the legionnaires of Bune. Could be that. Could be you're dialing up when you use the seal. It's basically a code to unlock access to a tribe of spirits. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's one demon can be in multiple forms in different places as it sees fit. Maybe it's that,
Right, okay.
To me, I don't know. It doesn't really matter as long as I get rich at the end of the day if I conjure a spirit to make me rich.
Sure.
Because,
right. I want to ask you, when we get into the appropriate, I don't want to forget to ask you about these great copper plates with the seals of the demons on them. I saw some months ago, maybe more recently than that, I saw them. They looked really great. We're getting some questions are going to pour in. People here on Skype waiting to call in. We're going to hold it off here until the top of the hour. Most of you have been with us from the beginning. If you're tuning in just now, we are here with Rufus Opus discussing the Holy Guardian Angel, practical attainment of the Philosopher's Stone, and what applied Hermetics is all about. We're also discussing demons at the moment. If you want to call in live, add us, Indigo Children Radio on Skype. Visit Rufus Opus page, www.rufusopus.com, and his blog spot, headforred.blogspot.com. Find all the links here in the show. So don't let me forget to ask you those questions. Man, so many interesting things to ask about. I want to ask you about those plates. I also want to get your opinion on egregore. I want to talk a little bit more about egregores, familiar spirits, being assigned to them. Does your work in programs talk a little bit about that? Get your thoughts on that. And then people are standing by to give us a ring here and ask their questions of Rufus Opus. So where were we essentially in this? We were we went from the alchemical phases of the work to the black phase to
I do that a lot.
No, we all do it. It's great. It's great. So where do you think? Let's. We're gonna take some calls here in a couple of seconds. Let's take 5 minutes. Cut something else down here. What do you think that we should hit up on? What did we not say?
Real quick, let's hit on what the point of the great work is. All right, making the Philosopher's Stone and what the Philosopher's Stone is. All right, and I just want to condense it in like a few short words. So the point of all of the great work is getting to learn who you are, what you really want, and then how you can actually manifest what you want using the powers at your disposal in your life. Hermetics gives you access to angels and demons and spirits that represent these forces, or you can go to college and learn ways to do it that way. It doesn't matter. The essence is essentially the same. The point of the great work is learning who you are, learning what you want, learning what it takes to get what you want, and then doing it. The accomplishment of the great work was the creation of the Philosopher's Stone. You have a physical thing in your hand, but what do you do with it? You grind it up, you mix it with water, and you use it to change the world. That's when you're accomplishing the great work. It's not until you've actually taken what you've learned and projected it into the world. So I mean that's the key, and that's the key of what all this is about. And I'm trying to find a way to make it a lot simpler, for people to understand that it's just figuring out who you are. It's just learning what you want, and then it's just finding ways to make it happen. And I guess that's kind of something I really wanted to touch on. I think that's the most important end result of the great work and everything we're talking about.
Interesting. So, and I also want to get your thoughts on the Aquarian. No, it was the Book of Aquarius. The Book of Aquarius. As a Hermetic magician, what do you think of this publication? Also, another anonymous author, also talking about the red stone, the white stone, black phases, beakers, heating, cooling. Are you familiar with this?
This is the very first time I've ever heard of it.
Okay, all right. Well, then we will save that. It's definitely a good one. Basically, in a nutshell, it was a book that I believe gained some popularity. Someone spoke about it on Coast to Coast. It was not the person in question. The person in question remains unknown. They claim to have researched all of this Hermetic lore and alchemy, decoded the primal substance or the gross substance, the dross, which is to be used, and then created this whole hands-on ABC 123 very long book called the Aquarian Manifesto. So write into us or get in touch with us on Facebook, and we'll share links about that. Okay, 8:58 coming in. What do you say we take some questions? Sure. I will start with the question. If you're on Skype, you can go ahead and call in. I want to start with the question that was sent through Skype, though. Roger up in Canada has a question, wants to know if Rufus has ever experienced a person shapeshift into a demon form.
Nope.
Has not happened.
Has not happened.
That's definitely an interesting question, and what with all of the things going on these days and people doing YouTube videos and cameras revealing XYZ and all this stuff, I can definitely understand why someone would ask that question. Okay, so those people that also want to write in. Another person on Twitter wanted to go back to the question about the all. Are the demons individual entities or just far reaches of our psyche? It seems like Crowley thought that they were. Mm-hmm. We're going to kind of hit on that. Do you want to take that one and go down that
road? I won't go too deep down into it. So, all right. So everything is in the mind of God in Hermetics, according to Hermetic philosophy and the Neoplatonic system. All of the grimoires are based on it. Basically, all of the demons are projections of the mind of God, just like we are. But you're a projection of the mind of God that's sitting over wherever it is that you live, and I'm sitting here on the beach in Florida. Are we separate? Are we all one? Are we one in the all? Yes, we're one in the all, but we experience things as if we are separate. We experience our interactions with these demons as if they are separate. Are they really parts of our mind? Well, get to know yourself. But you spend the time, if you really want to know the answer to that question, you sit down, you sit your fucking ass down, and you just sit there and you get to know who the fuck you are when nobody's looking, and then you'll be able to answer that question. Agrippa has a beautiful quote about that. when you know yourself, you'll know all things, including all of nature and all of God and all of the things that are within you. Something about that. I don't have it memorized, but I mean that's the only way to answer that. I can tell you what I think.
Sure.
I know how it operates as if, but really, if you really want to know, you have to look inside. You tell me, and whatever answer you come up with, it'll be a lot more meaningful when you find it out on your own.
Sure, absolutely. And a lot of times you're going to hear an answer like that, listeners, and I'll tell you what, I remember when we all started on various paths, and you get an answer like that, like you're just not going to get it until you're there, and you're like, man, blow me. Why don't you just tell me what's up, And it sucks, but unfortunately, we have to understand that Rufus knows what he's talking about, and I'm confident backing him up on that by saying the same thing. It's frustrating to start to understand universal truths. It's frustrating to find out that older people are right from time to time. They actually do.
You know what? You know what, though? I mean, who the fuck am I? Why would you believe anything I am saying to you?
Sure.
I'm a dude with a blog. I'm a dude with an internet connection and a fucking keyboard. Who the fuck am I? All I'm telling you is what I've read, what I've done with what I've read, and how it felt. Who gives a shit what Rufus Opus thinks? Ultimately, I mean, it doesn't matter. I'm telling you what I did, what I like, what I enjoyed, what I found out. I'd like to save you some time if I can, but really, I mean, you got to do it. You have to do it. It's your trip. It's not my trip. My trip is my trip, and I'm having a good time on it. I hope you get to too, but it's
sure.
I can't do it for you. And why would you want me to do it for you?
Sure. There are always going to be those people at that stage of their journey, though. Like the people spend a lot of time, all of us at some point spend a lot of time reading, a lot of time watching the documentaries, a lot of times getting psyched up, and then one day you just have to jump. We got a Facebook question coming in here. A question for Rufus. It reads, for people interested in Hermetics, what are 3 books you most recommend? That's a great question.
All right, yeah, I love that one. Okay, so Plato's Timaeus dialogue, the Enneads of Plotinus, and On Theurgy and the Soul by Iamblichus. Okay, not anybody lately, but if you can grok those things, pretty much everything else will make a lot of sense. If you want to skip to a more recent version of those things, a more recent version might be the 3 books of occult philosophy by Agrippa. It's available for free at aS0u5k.com. Everybody should read it. It's basically everything that I try to teach and try to do in pretty simple late English. King James.
Let me get those last 2 from you real quick. You said the Timaeus dialogue and the other 2. Let me throw these out there for everybody real quick.
The Enneads of Plotinus. It's Enneads of Plotinus. And Iamblichus, On the Mysteries. On the Mysteries by Iamblichus. Yeah, and basically, if anybody really wants to do what I've done, go to esotericarchives.com and just start poking through Joe Peterson's huge, vast library of medieval Hermetic texts. It's amazing. And you'll find Iamblichus there, and you'll find the 3 books of occult philosophy. One chapter of Agrippa has more actual information in it than 90% of the stuff that's been published in the last 10 years. So
There are esoteric archives that's been dropped out there for those of you listening at home who are on the Facebook page asking your questions. You can go ahead and find that link and go right there and do exactly what Rufus was talking about. All right, excellent questions. We got, okay, hold on. Sorry about that. We're just getting some private messages and some friend requests. Okay, so moving on. Now, we were going back. Somebody is going to call in. I know they're there, so you can call in now. It's past 9 o'clock. I know someone is waiting, so we'll just wait for you to go ahead and call in. Anybody else who wants to call in, just go ahead and add us Indigo Children Radio, and we'll go ahead and put you live into the Hangout. Okay, so recapping real quick. We're coming here. We're defined a little bit about who we are. We define a little bit about the great work, remembering and reclaiming who we are, alchemical phases of the work, black, the burning, changing, and then where were we at from there as we start to move from the black phase to...
Okay. So, all right, as you go through this work, you know, you get purified and consecrated and holy, and you conjured up a few demons, and shit sort of worked, or you've conjured up some angels, and you've learned a lot about yourself, and you've started to clean up your act a little bit because you find that you have more power, and it's easier to accomplish the things you want when you get cleaned up a little bit. And basically, the white phase is that where things start to get cleaned up and purified. The stuff that was black before starts to turn white. It's like when you make charcoal. You know, when you make a steak on the grill, you've got your charcoal goes from black to white. You know, and it's when it's hottest and it's ready to do what it's there for. You know, and there they are.
Go ahead.
Hello,
Rufus.
can you hear me?
Yep. Give us 1 second. Go ahead, Rufus. You can.
Hey, how are you doing?
Wait.
Okay. Yeah. But
Hello?
that's the white phase. It's starting to. It's
Hello?
just starting.
Hold on. Give us 1 minute, Kareem. Give us 1 second.
Sure.
We're just letting him finish his thought, and then we'll pull you in.
So
Okay.
yeah. So the white phase is sort of it's just where things start coming into perspective. You find out how to access your own personal power. You know, you're able to accomplish things. You've got a little bit more experience with the different spirits, and you kind of know more about what's going to happen when you ask for certain things from certain spirits. And it's just sort of integrating some of the forces that you've started to work with already. And it's a super accelerated form of the process. You know, you'll spend maybe something that might take you a year to work through in the black phase. A similar thing will pop up in the white phase, and you'll work through it in a week. You know, it's just because you've learned who you are and how to deal with your shit in a better way. And likewise with the material world, if you have a desire for something you want, in the black phase it might take 3 months to manifest. In the white phase it'll take 2 weeks. You know, that's the knowledge of the conversation with the holy guardian angel. That whole process is something that, you know, different systems have different perspectives on. And I actually got to write a chapter of an anthology on different aspects of knowledge and conversation with your holy guardian angel. That sort of is the equivalent of the white phase of the work. That book was published by Nephilim.com. It's out at NephilimPress.com. It's called The Holy Guardian Angel. Pretty simple, but really cool stuff.
Throwing that down here right now. For those of you who are listening to the book about Nephilim, Nephilim Press, I'm going to go ahead and put that in the events page. So we got there, and we're joined by Kareem. Kareem, thanks for calling into the show. Go ahead and tell everybody where you're calling from, and here you can meet Rufus, and Rufus meet Kareem. First caller.
Hey, Kareem.
Hey, how you doing, Rufus?
Pretty good. How you been?
I'm from Latrobe, PA, a small town in Pennsylvania, and I've been interested in, I guess, just learning more about the spiritual way of life and different aspects of, you know, life that we may not always be able to comprehend. So that's why I'm on the show tonight, and I'm glad to meet you.
Okay. Yeah, I hear they have some glass-lined tanks in Old Latrobe. For the
Hello?
Yeah,
I hear you.
the making of Rolling Rock. Rolling Rock is
Mainly,
from Old
I
Latrobe.
just wanted to add.
Oh, okay, great. Well, thanks for the input there. Did you have any? Did you have any other questions or any questions about Rufus's blog? It's out there, and we got some questions pouring in about that before we get some other callers coming in. By the way, we're gonna have 2 Skype lines here in the future. Right now, we're working with just one, but it seems like everything's working really well tonight, and that's just great. I hope everybody in the Hangout can hear our Skype caller just fine. So anybody who wants to give us some feedback on the page, say yes. We hear everybody. That's great. Thanks for joining us, Kareem. That's a great perspective. We appreciate you calling in and sharing with that. And we're getting some other private messages here.
Hey, Lucian, can I cut you off real quick? I wanted to go back to that first question that someone had asked about people shape-shifting in front of you.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I've never seen that happen, and certainly not into any demonic forms. But that is something that, like, for instance, the demons will help you learn how to do. And it's kind of an important thing. In the grimoires, they talk about demons granting you the power to appear as someone else or to change the shape of your appearance. Here in modern America, at least, image matters a lot. What that aspect of your day-to-day situations are that it's referencing when it says that you can change the way you look in these grimoires is basically how you look to other people. It's like if you want to appear to be, if you want to be accepted as a management, as an executive manager, you have to have the aura of an executive manager. You have to be able to project into a room the confidence that comes with the experience and the education and the know-how of being an executive manager. And if you can't pull that glamour off, there's no there's no point in you even trying. And some of these demons are really good at teaching that kind of thing. For people who are more into I don't know. It's also lunar magic. It's out of the sphere of the moon. If you work with Gabriel, the Archangel of the Moon, he's really good at helping you project to those kind of glamours, those kind of illusions, I guess. But it's a matter of convincing yourself and convincing the people around you that you are what you are picturing in your mind. And people who are psychically sensitive, and there are people who see things really easily, can pick up on another person's visualization of themselves. So I've met people who think of themselves as demonic, and they have built very carefully these little astral projections of themselves with demonic images. And I've met people who would be able to see those kind of things right away. And so I guess, while it's never happened to me, I've never seen anybody actually transform into a demon, I can picture a scenario where 2 highly disturbed people would experience that. So, yeah.
Sure, that makes sense. We've got all kinds of activity here coming in. Another question. Somebody has a question going back to the phase of black, the alchemical phase of black, where we're refashioning ourselves, we're pulling out the negativity in their life. They want to know how well you believe that that relates to their physical health. If they want to use that alchemical process to not just change themselves spiritually, but they want to change physically.
You mean like going through like a massive weight loss?
Right, sure, something like that. That's exactly what they're referring to. Some radical change in health.
Well, how to put it? Yes, of course. Okay, you can change everything about yourself at all the different phases. When you're going through the black work, if you're going to focus on, well, and see, this is the kind of thing that you can apply to everything. Like, all right, so full disclosure, I weighed at my peak weight, I was like 270. I had managed to get down to 220, like over 4 years, and I'm currently down to the 170. So I've lost a lot of weight, like in the last year or so. So this is kind of a big deal for me, and I try not to turn into some kind of physical fitness preaching kind of guy. But just to keep it within the boundaries of the question, yes, the black phase of the work will draw out the things that make you unhappy with your physical manifestation, right? So, here's a common psychobabble kind of thing, I feel I'm lonely, I'm depressed, I'm not getting any of the social interaction that would kick off my dopamine producers or receptors or whatever in my brain that aren't functioning, so I'll just have some chocolate and I'll feel as if I were loved even though I'm all alone. So you eat chocolate and you put on weight and your physical form gets less aesthetically pleasing to the general social population. You feel more depressed, more alone, you eat more chocolate. You end up in that cycle. So when you're going through the black phase, you might be like, well, I'm sick of looking like this. I want to lose weight. Well, why am I eating that way? The black phase will pull that up, and it'll show you, oh, it's because you're lonely. You're lonely because you're unhappy with yourself. And why are you unhappy with yourself? Well, because blah 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 blah. A whole list of negative shit will come up in the black phase. But as it comes out and you start exposing it, you say it out loud, you write it down. I feel like I eat because I feel sad. You write that down and you're like, okay, that's silly, or it's just the things that are triggering your behavior patterns come to the surface, and it gives you the opportunity to look at it consciously and be aware of it. And honestly, and see, this is where it gets kind of woo-woo. When you do the black work phase of the magic and you're doing the studies and you're doing the practices and you're meditating and you're contemplating things, you find yourself changing, and you have the power to just change and not be the person that you used to be, So you find your behavior patterns adjusting. You don't want to eat chocolate. You don't feel lonely because you've decided that, oh, if I don't want to be lonely, I should probably make some friends. So you go out and you make friends, that kind of thing. So.
I have a question coming to you from a freighter. Michael wants to know if you believe that Dr. Doriel's translation of the Emerald Tablets of Hermes into the Emerald Tablets of Thoth the Atlantean is extreme perversion of the Emerald Tablets of Hermes.
I think it is bogus, but that's just me.
I do too.
I don't think it's a big blasphemy. I think it's just a silly joke. I think that the Necronomicon, the Simon's Necronomicon, is a pretty neat book of magic, and it's pretty fun to do, but it's no more Lovecraftian or chthonic than my left, well, maybe my right toe, right. But it's fun. Bottom line is, if it brings you some kind of knowledge and wisdom and understanding of how the life that you're living is pleasing you, then it's got some value. But it's kind of a cartoon book, but whatever. Whatever.
I have a question from Amanda. She writes, she says, Rufus, I enjoy your blog. We're talking about the phases of alchemical change. Why did you choose the title Head for Red for the name of your blog?
Well,
Amanda, big fan.
Well, okay, pretty easy one there. The red phase was the final phase of the alchemical great work, I thought. Right, the red phase was when you are attaining you've purified all the elements. The black phase is over, the white phase is over, you've purified it. The green phase, we didn't really talk about that much, but that's where you take the purified forms and you mix them together. It's where, like, when copper cools down, it goes through all the colors of a peacock's feather, and that's why it's called the green phase. Anyway, but the green phase, you learn to integrate all the different forces of the planets and the elements and all that stuff. And then the red phase, you start taking all this knowledge and information and power that you've gained, and you put it together to create your Philosopher's Stone. And that was what, when I started my blog in 2006, that was my goal. Is I wanted to head for the red phase of work. I was heading. It was a log of my journey, through the different phases. I had actually just attained knowledge and conversation with my holy guardian angel. I knew I was in the white phase, and I wanted to have a record of what I went through as I went ahead through the different spheres. So I was heading for the red at that point, and I kind of had gotten some momentum, and I felt like I was going to make it. For the first time in my life, I thought that, the great work is real, and I can do it, So
Right, and on that note, listeners, that's not really a point to take so lightly when he says, when someone realizes, the great work, and in this context, that's the word that we're using, is real, and that you can do it, it just absolutely hits you when it starts to flip your life around, and things are seemingly easy, but then you can justify it in a worldly sense by saying, oh no, well, they're easy because you're doing what you're enjoying, with your life now, of course. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, until we break through that wall, it's difficult. So it's one of those things, listeners, really easy for someone to say. One of those things that's definitely got to be experienced. Okay, open to any more questions. Those people that wanted to know about the white phase we were getting into, we dropped the link to the book of Nephilim Press. Sorry, what was it called again? The
Holy Guardian Angel.
The Holy Guardian Angel is there on the event page, so that now you can check that out. And because we didn't get on the green phase, I think the green phase is important. So here we are recapping. We're talking about a chemical change. We're talking about changing your life. We're talking about changing your personality. And when you do these things, the life around you actually changes. I mean, all the way down to the little things. You go from the Velcro wallet to the leather wallet. That seems like you go from the Velcro wallet to the leather wallet.
It's so fucking true.
Yeah, right. So that's where we're at now. Rufus, tell us a little bit about the green phase, the spheres, and the emerald tablet, so we don't skip over that.
Okay, yeah, that's kind of a big one. All right, so once the black and white phase are kind of about clearing up you, so that you can get rid of all the shit that keeps you from being yourself. All right. All the negative stuff burns away in the black and the white phase, and I'm glossing over it, but that's shit to go through. If you've ever had a sunburn, if you've ever burned your hand on the stove, you know that being burned hurts. So they call it the black and the white phase because you're on fire, and you're being purified by fire, and it's not fun. Attaining knowledge and conversation with the Holy Guardian Angel is a process that's painful for a lot of people. I have a theory about you can't actually achieve anything in magic unless you've been through trauma, but that's just kind of this part of me that's like, not fair. But anyway, so that's the black and white phase. The green phase is once you've cleared yourself out, you're not that negative person anymore. You're starting to realize that you're something pretty fucking awesome, that you can do what you want if you just had the tools that you needed. The green phase is about getting the tools. Okay, you spend this time going through initiations in each of the 7 spheres, right? The moon. You go to the moon, Mercury, Venus, the Sun, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Okay, those are the 7 planetary spheres. In each sphere, you go through a process of initiation. Some of the more of the dross is burned off, and you get a little bit more wisdom about yourself. But you also get the power to use the forces of the sphere. Like in the moon, we were talking about glamours and illusions. The moon is the sphere of dreams and the sphere of images. It's the last sphere before a thought from the mind of God manifests in the material plane. So it's the last sphere that applies anything to that idea. So it's the last layer of a thing. So the moon rules like your skin, for example. Your appearance, your physical appearance. It rules the outermost pieces of plants and the different tables of correspondences. So when you are initiated into the sphere of the moon, all of a sudden you look around and you see through everybody's delusions and their deceits and their glamours and their bullshit and their acts and their games and their crap. And you're like, holy crap, you guys are just a bunch of mechanical monkeys lying to each other to get ahead so that you can usually so they can have a decent orgasm. So I mean, but that's part of the lunar initiation. You go through the Mercury initiation, and all of a sudden you're finding, oh my God, I'm so eloquent. Look at all the different ways I can make my ideas manifest. I can generate 4 different revenue streams, and I'm making enough to make up for my one job because I've got four revenue streams bringing in a quarter of what my main job was. Oh my God, that's great, and I can keep my main job. You find out how the system works in Mercury, and how to use it for your advantage. You get lucky. You learn the odds and math, and in more formal systems, you learn a lot of Kabbalah. You learn a lot of the math and the gematria and all that. All those very useful scientific skills. And then in Venus, you go through that, and all of a sudden you have this sexual, beautiful, wonderful, aesthetic, delicious experience. You get to learn how to use the forces of Venus. It's very pleasant. I'm a Taurus, if you can't tell. Tauruses are ruled by Venus, and it's my favorite. So
it's your favorite.
Yes.
For reasons known and unknown at the same time.
It's a very pleasant sphere to hang out in. But anyway, each of the spheres, each of the planetary spheres has that kind of effect on you that's related to whatever forces they manifest. And when you go through the green phase, you are basically going through a process of initiation into each of those 7 spheres. And you experience these things. The intelligences of the spheres set things up so that you can learn all these wonderful ins and outs of what the sphere's powers are and how to make them work in your life. You get to reclaim that piece of yourself that received that portion of the sphere on your descent into the material world. You learn who you are as a child of God, and basically these intelligence of those spheres are your brothers and sisters. You learn to integrate that and how to use the forces to make things happen the way you want. And in the green phase, it's pretty focused on each of the different spheres. So I'm going to learn about the moon, and I'm going to learn about the Mercury, and all the different stuff, and Jupiter. Everybody hangs out in Jupiter for a while because money, and blessing, and luck, and favor, and everybody loves me. And all right, so everybody doesn't hang out there, but I did. And
right.
Yeah. So anyway, it's a fun experience, and you focus on all of those main things. But when you hit the red phase, you're done with focusing on the specifics, and it's time to put it all together. Have you ever studied the trivium, the classical education model of the trivium?
I have not. I have not.
So,
and I know that we were going to hit on that earlier in the black phase.
Well, I might have forgotten that. The trivium it's basically like in school. You've got grammar school, the elementary school, right, and then you've got it's grammar, logic, and rhetoric. Those are the 3 schools, and grammar is the first phase, where you learn all the pieces and the parts. Logic is where you learn to take the pieces and the parts and apply them according to the system, right? Like if you look at any logical system, you can see how the pieces and individual parts of the system are interacting in a process of whatever the process is, right? So if you're making ice, you take water, you remove the heat, you put it in a form, you put all these things together in a certain order, and you end up with an ice cube, right? That it's the pieces and parts and the process are logic. Pieces and parts are grammar, process is logic. Rhetoric is where you create new processes. Okay, it's where you take the pieces and the parts and you put them together in different ways to create different things. So that's the red phase. All right, the black and white phases are sort of grammar. green phase is sort of logic. It's also kind of grammarish. But the red phase is where you take it all and you put it together and you create the stone. That is, you use, okay, so I'm going to, I want to move to another state, so I need to move. That's flow, that's expansion of opportunity, so I can get a job over there, so that's Jupiter. It's focus awareness, that's self-discipline, that's Mars, so I'll take a little bit of Mars. It's, I've got to actually express that interest into the universe at large and nurture the opportunities. That's the Sun. I've got to bring it all together. That's Venus. I have to communicate it and network all the different pieces together. Oh, that's Mercury. And wrap it all up in the Moon, and then turn it over to the elementals. You take a desire, a thought that you have, something that you want because you've learned who you are and what you really want, and you take it through all the 7 spheres, and you turn it over to the material world and all the different material spirits, whether you want to call them elementals or demons or goetic spirits or whatever. All the material spirits go about making your idea manifest, And the red phase is when you're actually behaving as if you really are an expression of God made in His own image, who creates as they see fit. That's what making the stone is all about. So
that's the culmination of all of your work, when you're waking up in the daytime and you're remembering what your life used to be like as that person who couldn't accomplish things. Everybody was in their way. Your job probably totally blew. I mean, that's almost always part of the deal.
Oh yeah.
And you move on to the red phase, as you're saying, and you really become that person. I'm just essentially reiterating what you're saying. You really become that person, and when you become that person, you will say to yourself, "I remember that guy, girl who wasn't there. I remember what it was like." It's like those of us that are older now, we remember what it was like to be young. Okay, we remember. It's a fact. It's some part of our history, and I think it's an excellent point that you brought up, and I think that the red phase is a great way to sum that reality up.
Mm-hmm.
And next comes, what do you say, projection?
Yeah, projection is where you take all that stuff that you've learned and you've made the stone. The red phase, you've made the stone. The projection phase is when you take that stone and you grind it up and you use it. Right? So in the myth of the Philosopher's Stone that Rosicrucians have, basically you create the Philosopher's Stone alchemically, and when you grind it up and mix it with pure spring water, you give it to sick people and it cures everything that is making them sick. You give it to old people and it makes them young. It is the ultimate panacea. It cures everything. And that's what making the stone is all about. And basically that's the power that you have. That's the potential that you have, and that's what the Kabbalion is talking about, is what your potential is. If you know and understand what the framework is, what the Hermetic framework is, what the cosmology is, what this is all about. It's all about learning a system of manifesting what you desire purely without getting in your own way and accessing the cheat codes or the assistance that you have access to, as a human being. That's all we're doing, is just really fully realizing our potential, being human on purpose.
Okay, hold on. I just hung up the breathing. It's not a problem. It's just I didn't know the slider on the other end here of the mixing board wasn't muting that. But anyway, it's not a problem at all. We're listening to what you have to say, which brings us to one of our next favorite questions. We went from the phases, we talk about projection, we talk about the real accomplishment of the work, and then we're faced with almost everyone's favorite question. I tried it, Rufus. I've tried it out. I've been on a path for X amount of time. I feel like my head's in the right place. I feel like my heart's in the right place. And it doesn't work. I'm not getting any results. What's wrong with me?
You're a lazy bastard. Oh. I'm sorry. But what I mean is, yes, there are times in the work, where it feels as if you aren't getting anywhere, but you must persevere and persevere and persevere. There's a lot of stories in Eastern traditions of the young acolyte that comes to the Zen master and is like, "You must teach me," and the Zen master beats the fuck out of him with a stick and walks away. And he comes back, "You must teach me," and the Zen master beats the fuck out of him. The process repeats until the persistence of the student proves to the master that he's serious, right? In the mystical process, especially in the black work, one of the main ways that we're challenged, that the ordeals will arise, is a lack of obvious results. It's a trick, okay? You sit here, you do a magical rite to make some money, and you have no money in it, or you get a windfall, which is hallelujah, wonderful, great, and then 2 weeks later you're still broke. That's even worse, in my opinion, is when your magic works and you're still broke. It's like, really? But until you realize that you're broke because you spend more than you make, and until you turn that off and refocus your funds and address the reasons that you're spending more than you make, the results might seem pretty hard to find. I'm really good at money magic. I can manifest money. I've been doing it for 8 years, and I would say that is one of my greatest strengths as a result of my focus on Jupiter and Mercury and stuff. But what I've learned is money is the result of work, and the amount of work that you have to do in our society to gain certain amounts of money, and it doesn't have to be work, it can be investments. You can land is a big deal for people who actually have wealth. It's not always liquid cash. It's actually property is a major. Anyway, that's an economic thing.
You're not going to get more of it. They're not going to make more land.
Right, exactly. You can't. Anyway, wealth is about it's you have to be able to, between where you're at and having what you want in terms of wealth, you have to be willing to do what it takes. And there are formulas involved. You can either go through and work for an hourly wage for X number of hours until you have X number of dollars, or you can go through and work for hourly wage and turn that into investment, which becomes interest income, which is another revenue stream, or you create X number of items that you sell for $1 a piece on the internet, until you've made, right? So there's doing a money spell for me results in opportunities, either an opportunity for a new job, or an opportunity to do more work for people, or a lot more clients, or an investment opportunity that I just happen to have enough money to get into. There's always that between where you're at and where you're going, there has to be some kind of modus operandi. Money magic results in the generating of those opportunities, but you still have to do the work. You have to go through the process. You have to fulfill the requirements for the formula. And if you don't do it, it ain't going to work. So when people aren't experiencing the results that they want, they say they're trying and they're not getting results, chances are they're looking in the wrong place. If you're doing money magic and you're not making any money, well, maybe you need to take a look at your actual dollars and cents. Show me your budget. Show me your spreadsheet that says, this is what I spent my money on last month, and this is the money that came in. Oh, look, here in the money that came in was an extra $15 on 2 days after I did a rite for $15. Well, I went to McDonald's. I'm simplifying, but that's the shit. That's what it is, or for me, it was always I would do a rite for $12,000, and I get a $12,000 debt that I wasn't aware of because I wasn't taking care of my shit. I wasn't cleaning up my life. So, You know, it doesn't matter how good you are at making money if you aren't
we
wise
we
enough
can.
to manage it.
I want to definitely at some point in time. It's a really, really good topic to do a whole broadcast on money, magic, and sorcery. And
Oh,
the
yeah.
reason why I think it's a good idea is, in my experience, is people try to do money magic, and then it doesn't work. And then guess what they do? They convince themselves, wait a second, it didn't work because it's evil, it's wrong. So we brainwash ourselves into not liking money and wanting things, you know, less and less, even if you truly wanted them at a certain point in time. We like de-brainwash ourselves. We get defeated, and instead of trying again, you run away from our goal, and I see it happen a lot. And this reminded me of the thing that I forgot earlier in the broadcast when I said, oh, I have something that I wanted to say to you. And this is something that occurred to me just this week. It's really, really recent on my mind, and I want to get your take on it. I was just having a conversation with someone recently about the Logos, the Word, and creation and manifestation. And it occurred to me that one of my particular workings didn't work out so well. It worked well enough, but it didn't work out nearly as well as one of my creation processes that worked out really, really well. So the question is why? And I determined that the most successful project worked out really, really well because I actually already have a better understanding of the whole picture of what I wanted. I had an inborn understanding of, let's just say, what you said, the modality, the operation, the mechanism that's going to get there, as opposed to this other desire that I wanted, and I thought that would be nice to have. That would be a great scenario, but I absolutely lack the fine inner knowledge, the creation that it absolutely takes to create that, where we can imagine that the Hermetic all and God and this God concept and its infinite wisdom knew how to create us in the earth or existence because it had a really strong understanding of how to build it. Do you think that it has anything to do with successful magic? And then we got another question coming in.
Oh, God, yes. All right, so yes, that has 100% of everything to do with successful magic. You operate within the system that you understand the best, and if you're, you know, you've heard the joke about the guy that was, you know, floods are rising, and then he's stuck on a roof, and a boat comes by, and you know, somebody else comes by, and a helicopter comes by, and he dies, and he's like, God, why didn't you save me? And God's like, I sent you a boat and a helicopter, for fuck's sake. You know, a lot of people do wealth magic and expect it to come in some kind of miraculous way, and they turn down opportunities to make money, because they don't realize that that's how magic works. So yeah, understanding how the process works is essential, and you know, doing a rite to bless a process that you understand is going to be a lot more effective than doing a rite to be really successful in something you've never tried before, because what the spirits end up doing, in my experience, is they start training you in how to use the system. And I mean, everything I ever had to learn about from scratch, I failed a lot at on the way before I learned how to do it right. You know, and that's just how it works. You know, that's life in the flesh suit. So, yeah, I mean, of course.
We have a question, an excellent question, following along exactly what you're talking about, coming to us over Skype from Australia. Question to Rufus goes like this. John R. King, a.k.a. Imperial Arts, ventured that the reason why the goetic apparitions aren't consistent is precisely because people aren't working the system as it should be. This doesn't mean it won't be effective, but I'd love to hear your take, Rufus, about whether you think it makes a difference or not.
Yeah, John was he was basically reiterating something that O'Grunyon and Lazewski and to some extent Konstantinos have also claimed, that basically if you do the rite exactly as it's written, then you will have the exact results. And you know, I'm sorry, it's not true. Okay, I know this for a fact from my own experiences. I know this for a fact from my friends' experiences who have had uh, I will say that they have had the most authentic physical manifestations of demonic and angelic entities of anybody that I know. I know for a fact that they performed the rites repeatedly, exactly to specifications, and failed quite a bit more often than they had any physical successes. Also, people like Imperial Arts and aS0u5k have been known to write about their experiences in exaggerated ways. I can't find the exact quote, but like aS0u5k, for example, put together this description of what happens when he conjures demons, and he talks about the palpable change in the temple space and the smells of the spirits and the banging of things and the flickering of lights and the final visual manifestation of the spirit, as if they all happened in one rite. And I read something somewhere that he'd written, either I can't remember where it was, and it drives me nuts because I'd really like to be able to link to this as a source. But basically what he did was he took events from multiple different rituals and wove them together into an anecdote. And yeah, I mean, I've over the years I've had the lights flicker, I've had doors bang that shouldn't have during conjurations, and if it had all happened in one ritual, I would have had to change my underwear afterwards, quite frankly. But I mean, it's just not the normal experience. And when you read about people having these wonderful, awesome, fantastic experiences, and they place these requirements very high and set the standard super high, you have to have a lion that belt that you've actually killed yourself, and it has to have the right names of God on it. When you actually get down to the nitty-gritty of the grimoires, you find out that there are no instructions that are consistent from one version to the other, that there is no one real way to do it, that there never was, and people who say there was are just full of shit. So no, and no. I don't agree with John. I disagree with him entirely. I don't think that I think that you can have as much success with a paper circle, a paper talisman, and a mug of hot water if you're sincere, if your intentions are well defined, and you are actually functioning in accordance with what you really want, knowing who you are and what you are on the face of the earth as a creator God. If you're fully aware of that, you could you could wet your thumb and conjure a spirit in your own reflection right there without any need of anything else and get what you want. So yeah.
The individual who asked that question said, excellent answer, and they thank you so much from Australia. Thank you for listening. I can only imagine what time it is there. We're so screwed up in the States. We know that people live in other time zones, but I can't possibly imagine what time it is down there. Australia, if it's, oh gosh, it must be morning time. All right, anyway, moving along. There's two more subjects, if we have time, that I wanted to hit on before we close it out. More and more people have begun to show up and ask us questions on Skype. That's just fine. Rufus, if you got to bounce, you just go ahead and drop me a chat here in the Hangout chat.
I'm still good.
Excellent. We wanted to go back to two topics. One, the demon plates that you have out of copper with the sigils of the various demons on them. Yep. What you have to say about them, what you think of them, and then, of course, if you would indulge us, is it working out better than individuals not using it? And then secondly, let's get into egregores a little bit, and we'll see where it goes from there.
All right. Okay. So the talismans you're talking about are those were Venus talismans that I posted the pictures of, the copper images. I am super behind on my orders. I have I think like 7 talismans right now that I really wanted to get out before this weekend, but I did not. Anyway, the talismans are based on the Key of Solomon pinnacles of the planets. There are various numbers of pinnacles assigned to each planet, and each pinnacle is supposed to do certain things. While reading through the descriptions of them, I realized that it says that it tells you that you basically need to use one or another of 2 pinnacles of each planet plus the other ones to make them effective. So what I do is I engrave, for example, for Venus, there's this one talisman that is supposed to bring the person that you think about while you're holding the item to you. And I call it "Come to Me," right? But basically, it's your standard love talisman that bends another person to your will. And we can talk about ethics if you'd like, but I'd rather not. I would rather leave it at we do what we want. And
I was about to say ethics are great, but I don't know what hat we're wearing. I wear my own personal hat on ethics, which is very different compared to other people. I'm sure that you do as well. So I guess we probably shouldn't go there. But I'm sure we would agree. I'm not really big on the ethics. I know a lovely fair young witch out there who follows the Wiccan Rede or the Rule of Three, and I totally get it. Beautiful person, beautiful people, individual I'm thinking of right now, probably listening to the show, and he's talking about me. I just know he is, and I just absolutely love him for that philosophy, but I absolutely don't agree.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, and that's your ethic, and that's her ethic. And what's an ethic? An ethic is what you do based on what you believe. So
more made up fun stuff. Okay.
Exactly. So all right. So where were we? What did we have an actual question or?
Well, your experience with the plates versus
I'm sorry.
Plates without, let's say, did you ever have a time you didn't use an actual copper sigil, but you tried it before without?
Oh, you mean like using the actual metal versus paper?
Sure, right, something like that. Like how fine a line are we walking between the actual necessary implements of getting the magical sorcery done or not? What do you think?
Well, the more you put into it, the more you've put into it, right? So, what happens when you put more into anything? You get a better end result, right? Now, the Key of Solomon pinnacles, the instructions tell you to write them on paper in colored ink. Okay, they don't tell you to make them in copper. That's something that we do today.
Wait! I thought that it really said they had to be out of
No.
I thought the 72 demons.
The 72 do, yeah. We're talking about.
Okay, never mind.
All right,
I beg your pardon. I'm getting all my literature messed up right now.
Dude, there's so many, man. So, yeah. So I mean, the Key of Solomon pinnacles that I make that I engrave in copper are Venus talismans because copper is the metal of Venus, and they're beautiful and they're a lot of fucking fun to make, and I can sit there and I can make 3 of these goddamn things in an hour, and when I'm done, I am so stoned on Venus energy. It is a very wonderful thing, and I told you earlier, she's my favorite, right, for obvious reasons. I don't understand people who don't, anyway. So, yeah, so of course I'm going to make copper talismans that trigger and focus and condense the fluids of the sphere of Venus, because I like to, and it makes it more potent to be in the actual. All right, so resonance, right? You go into a guitar shop and you pull an E string, and every guitar that's tuned right will thrum on their E string, right? Because of resonance, right? So copper has a Venus resonance, and the resonance will attract Venus spirits, or you can use I think it's green ink for Venus, I'd have to check my resources, but you could use green ink on paper, and you would get the green ink to be the resonance to Venus. Or you can just make it out of copper, and that's your resonance, because copper is metal, and you put more effort into it, you get a little bit stronger of a resonance, I think, and it's more powerful and potent, and it's, you know, so, I mean, for each of the 72 spirits, I've made their seals and the appropriate metals. That does have a pretty pretty cool effect in their manifestation. I've totally cheated with those things, but yeah, I mean, I guess to answer the question, anything that you spend more time doing, making it as authentic as possible using traditional resources and traditional like tables of correspondences, the more likely you're going to have a certain desired effect. And whether that's because the spirits are going to respect you more, or they have to obey the rules because they're the rules, or just because you put into the effort and you actually induced in yourself a certain level of initiation because you've put the effort into finding the copper and engraving it in the right hour and the right time. You know, maybe that changes you too, you know, and that's why you have a different experience. Maybe it's because you're more sensitive to it because you put the time and effort into it, or maybe it's because the spirits respect it. But ultimately, again, it goes back to who cares as long as you get what you want, you know.
I have another great question from another one of your website and blog followers, saying that they're having a great time listening and very happy to listen to Rufus, and they're confused on this point. They want to know what you think about working with Saturn's sphere versus Jupiter's sphere for money. And they allude to Saturn having a lot of wealth, success, properties, and qualities.
Pluto.
But here's more. Pluto?
Plutocracy, yes. Well, I'm sorry, not Pluto, but I mean, Saturn was sort of an underworld deity, right? I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't have said that because I might be excusing my ignorance. But yeah, okay. So the underworld is the world of wealth. Pluto is the god of wealth. You know, you used to dig gold up from underground. People would store wealth underground. Saturn has some correspondences being the underworld sort of god. I can see where there would be some correspondences to wealth in Saturn. But what type of wealth? You know, it's the type of wealth that is cold, solid, dense, and very, very strongly materialized, usually underground. Okay, so like it might be a really good way to get some cold, hard cash, for example. But Jupiter, Zeus, our lightning-loving father, sky daddy god, Jove, who is jovial and happy, is not a death god. He's all about expansion and rapid rewards and manifestation and blessings. The planet Jupiter is known in astrology as the greater benefic. You know, it's beneficial. It helps you. It's everything good. You know, a blessing from Jupiter is going to expand you and fill you with opportunities and joy and health and prosperity and, you know, the favor of men. You know, Jupiter was the one that made people a king and made their whole descendants to be noble because they're special, because Jupiter liked them, for gosh sakes. You know, Saturn is not nearly so pleasant, not happy, not healthy, not kind, not benevolent. Saturn is the greater malefic, astrologically. It is the sphere of death, terminal, terminus, the god terminus. It's the terminal sphere. It's the it rules the bones. It's you know, it's Mr. Grimm. It's death. So yes, there's a lot of wealth buried with corpses in the earth, And yes, it's a way to get money. Do you wanna do that?
If you're one of those guys that likes pulling coins out of dead people's pockets, I guess.
Yeah, fucking go for it, man. Whatever. Whatever floats your boat.
Good.
But see, that's actually a pretty cool point. Every planet is a good planet to go to for money. Okay, Mars is a great place to go for money if you're a soldier, a security agent, a police officer, if you need a promotion, if you're in the military and you've been skipped over for promotion once and you really need to make those lieutenant colonel bars before you are forced to retire, then Mars is your go-to god, and that's a monetary result, and yeah, Mars can bring you money. The sun rules gold. The manifestation of gold is all about the sun. The sun's a great place to go for money. You know, Venus rules production and the generation of things. You know, without productivity, there is no business. There is no industry. Venus is a great place to go for money. You know, Mercury, transactions, flow, luck, gambling. You know, every business, every exchange of money between two people for goods and services and value. That's all ruled by Mercury. Mercury is a great place to go for money. You know, every planet can be used however you want to. So arguing about is Saturn better than Jupiter? No, it's not better. It's different. It's just different.
Very good answer. Very good question. Boy, we fielded a bunch of great questions tonight. That was exciting. All right, one thing that I do want to touch, which I think for those people who have stayed this long, it looks like, I can't tell who's been here the longest, but some have come, some have gone. For those of you who stayed this long, I would like to talk to Rufus about familiar spirits again, the creation of egregores, initiation, what you think it means, the dealing with these other beings, the fact that they're alive, the fact that they may or may not interact with you in real life, in your dreams, even. We talked a little bit about it in the beginning. You talked about a lot of these, the Dionysians, the Eleusinians, and a lot of the Greek and Roman mystery schools had a lot to do with these familiar types of spirits. So we mentioned a little bit about that. Would you tell us yes or no or not? Are you working with any familiars at this time? Should people be doing it? I'll tell you right now, I am, but I'm going to go probably into it at the Left Hand Path conference.
Oh, awesome.
What do you have to say about that?
Well, I mean, yeah, your holy guardian angel is in a way a familiar spirit. You know, each of the 7 archangels of the planets, I've been working with them for so many years. We are familiar with each other. They are kin. They are my uncles. You know, they were here before me, but they aren't like me, and they love me. So, I mean, they're all my uncles and aunts and sisters and brothers. The gods, the heroes. You know, that heroes are an interesting class that Yamacus gets into. But, you know, the dead who've gone before us, who have achieved great things, you know, the saints, whatever you want to call them, the Gede, whatever, Gede, I don't know what the voodoo people call their spirits, but the honored dead that help you out with stuff. Yeah, I have familiars. I've been working with a particular spirit from anyway, it doesn't really matter. But yes, I do I do have spirits I work with regularly. There are some from the Limaget and Scoatia, there are some from other grimoires, and there are some that I've contacted on my own who have responded to calls. So
what about making your own, birthing your own? Do you, well, that's maybe strange. How about creating your own?
Right, I know what you're talking about.
Right, what do you think?
Okay, so in my AA studies and in the OTO, that's kind of a thing that is sort of accepted as a de rigueur. You know, that's just sort of how it works. Chaos magic, I think, is pretty good at saying, because I believe it, that makes it happen. The homunculus and some of the different alchemical traditions that can be created with semen in horse uteruses and piles of shit. This created entity, the tulpa, right? It's a real thing that exists. It's a thing that we can do, right? It's in too many different cultures and too many different belief systems. There's too many techniques that seem to be effective for it not to be real. For a long time, I used to believe that the people who experienced the results of what they thought was creating their own spirit were actually attracting existing spirits. You know, what they didn't know, because they were just not as smart as me, was that they were really attracting already existing spirits who would come in and do whatever they thought they were programming their spirit to do. Part of the reason I thought that was because of the story of the tulpa. I don't remember her name, but there's in the Victorian age, when the sun never set on the British Empire, I think it was Blavatsky, I don't know, but some woman was traveling through the Tibet, through India and Tibet and all those places, and she created a spirit that would be an old monk who would teach her all this wonderful wisdom of the East. And she visualized him, and she created him. And he came to her, and he taught her things, and he was her familiar spirit, and she learned a lot from him. But then, over time, she started to change. The spirit started to change, and he became more sinister and darker, and started to frighten her. And she had to banish it and undo the spirit. After she'd spent all that time creating it, she had to uncreate it, basically. And the more she asked about this tulpa practice of creating your own spirits, the more she found out that most of the people advised against it, because of it, they have a tendency to go bad, right? The spirit goes bad. Why does the spirit go bad? I thought it was because they were actually either an elemental spirit, like a goetic spirit, the remains of the undead, the shades, the part of the human body that should die but doesn't. Sometimes, in some cases, I thought it was just these spirits who had been attracted to a magician who was making these offerings of thought and energy and candles and incense and smoke and whatever else they were doing to create their egregore, or their entity, not an egregore. This would be just like a single spirit. That it wouldn't, that it didn't matter. That it wasn't really real. They just were pretending it was real, but really they were dealing with spirits, and eventually it would go bad. These days, I don't really care. I've worked with too many assigned spirits from the elements that turned out to be less pleasing in the long run than I wanted, and too many that turned out to be much better than I wanted, to think that it matters that way. I guess I would have to say I'm agnostic on that. I don't know whether you can create a spirit or not. My tendency is to lean towards the prior existence of the spirits that we're just incorporating in our own belief systems. But ultimately, my bottom line is it doesn't matter if you're getting what you want. As long as you do the magic and you get the results you anticipated, you're successful, and that's really all that matters. The why and the because, that's just something for people to argue about when they don't have what they want.
Sure, yeah. When you don't have what you want, it's like we were saying earlier. People, the tendency is like, oh no, you know what? I didn't really want that, or now I know better. Now I realize that I used to want to have all this money and success, but now I'm so much better because of my constant failure. They beat themselves out of the game. You know what I mean? Like, I'm so much by my complete and utter failure in my quest for success in life that, they become holier than thou. And I'm not trying to make fun of anybody, but they become holier than thou, and they reject all material gain because they were no good at getting material things to start with.
Right. And, well, you know what, though? If they're happy at the end of the day, chances are they they couldn't handle the material wealth anyway. They probably didn't like it to start with, and maybe that's why they were pushing it away and why they had so much failure in the first place, is because they had such a shitty attitude towards having enough to eat. I mean, maybe that's their real problem, and the only way they can achieve happiness is to reject it. So I don't know.
Excellent.
Whatever.
Well, you're the author of you've got at least 4 books out there. Do you have another one coming out, or is it?
Well, the next thing I have coming up, well, I've got the Holy Guardian Angel book that we talked about earlier. I'm a contributor
That
on
one's not
that.
there.
But I have another book coming out from Nephilim Press that hasn't been published yet, and it's going to be basically it's the green phase of the work. It's a set of practices that can take you up and down through the 7 spheres and hone your abilities to manipulate and work with and activate the forces of those spheres within your own life and in your own kingdom. The metaphor I put together for this particular book was the creation of your own your world as if you were its king, or queen or whatever, its ruler, its monarch, and basically the practices are designed to integrate the forces of each sphere in your own sphere as a magician, so that you can create the world the way you see fit. So that's coming out here probably in the next couple months or so, hopefully. And when that comes out, I'll be offering a class to go along with it, and the book will be like a textbook kind of thing, and the class will be something that is in addition to the book. It provides a little bit more detail and kind of coaches people through the process. So
I'm really glad you brought that up too. Let's tell everybody on Facebook where you would like them to find you when you're actually offering these courses and classes, because we know that you do it. We know that on rufusopus.com you can go there and look at his books, Modern Angelic Grimoires, Goetic Grimoires, Talismans, one more. What is the other one? The Genius Daemon.
Oh yeah, that one. Yeah.
So
that's
courses. The books, where on Facebook, though? Where's the page on Facebook? They can go up to the top left-hand bar, search for Rufus Opus, connect with you, and start getting notified when you have these classes.
Well, I've got my personal account. I've got the Rufus Opus page. I don't actually know what the address is on that.
It is. I'll go ahead and I'll get it right here.
Yeah, technology, man. Yeah, I actually am kind of overwhelmed with the number of different ways to try to get the message out. But if you find me on Facebook, you'll either find my page that has the icon of the caduceus, or you'll see my personal page, which is a picture of me. And either way is a good way to figure out what's going on. My blog, everything that I do that's major, I post on my blog. And that's wired into Twitter and Facebook and my Facebook page and pretty much everything. I think it even shows up on my website somewhere, but
it does. It's really cross promoted very well. Okay, so first place www.rufusopus.com. Second place blogspot.com. So headforred.blogspot.com. That's Rufus blog, where you're going to find that. Rufus on Facebook. You're looking for Rufus. I'm sorry. You're looking for Facebook.com/RO-Apocalypse.
Oh yeah.
There you go.
Sorry, it's been a while.
It's
Apocalypse.
Apocalypse. It is Rufus Opus public page. And you can go there and check that out. I see a number of people tonight are already going there. Excellent work. We had a great time. We got a bunch of questions. We could go on and on and on.
Oh yeah, maybe we'll wrap it up though tonight
Yeah, we will. There's actually one more question we were going to get into. We're going to have to save it. So
what was it?
We were going to get into this one. This is another good one. Are you born or are you made a magician?
Oh, let's hold off on that one.
We got to hold off on that, and
that's the Arbitel, man.
Yeah, that's the one that brings us past 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Check out those links, folks. We appreciate everybody that has come by tonight. We appreciate hanging out with us on some of this newer equipment. joining us live on Skype, getting piped in to the Hangout. Everybody getting a chance to hear it. Very, very cool. I appreciate everybody's patience. If I hung up on you during the live broadcast because you're on Skype, that's not because of you. I just, I'm learning the new systems, and I didn't know how to mute you. So I apologize. Thanks for everyone coming. Rufus, thank you so much for doing this. And for the listeners that have helped make this happen, fans of Rufus, people that enjoy his work, and people that told myself to get in touch with him, what a real pleasure it was to have you tonight. I think we had an excellent discussion. Rufus, is there anything that we missed when you want to close out? Everybody knows how to get into. Oh, your email. Let's give out your email real quick.
Well, you might be able to guess it. It's rufusopus@rufusopus.com. I'm not a narcissist. The more I hear all my contact information, yeah.
Rufusopus@rufusopus.com. Get in touch with him. Hopefully he'll come back with us in the future so we can talk more about being born, being made a magician, and money, magic. Everybody says we don't need it, but you know what? We really need it, so we're going to talk about it here in the future. What a real pleasure, and thanks again for joining us, everyone that called. And at the end of the broadcast, if you just give me an extra 30 seconds, I want to play you down the commercial of where you can find everybody else on the show this summer at the International Left Hand Path Conference in July 25th. Get with all of us on that, and thanks for joining us. Everybody have a good night. Give us 1 second while we play this down, and we'll see you out there. All right, we're going to play this.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey everyone, and thank you for joining us right now for this announcement here at Indigo Children Radio, where we are excited to invite you to join us live in person at the Second International Left Hand Path Conference, taking place on Friday, July 25th, 2014 through Sunday, July 27th at the Marriott East in Indianapolis, Indiana. A link to the Facebook event page is down in the video description, so check it out. Like the page and stay current with the latest news on the conference. Events will include authors, guest speakers, artists and musicians, workshops, panel discussions, live music, a black tie ball, art show, vendors, poetry, and more. Check out presenter, author, artist, and musician bios on the Facebook event page and see who is attending the conference. So get a head start and connect with everyone there. Get your tickets today. Early bird special price tickets are on sale. For pricing and ticket details, please see the link below. For questions about the Second International Left Hand Path Conference, simply visit the Facebook event page and contact the conference administration. Everyone is welcome, and we will see you there.